Shalom, I'm Eddie Chumney of Hebraic Heritage Ministries, and we welcome you today to our study on the Hebraic roots of Christianity. We are doing a series on what the rabbis in Judaism teach about the 10 tribes. And I have a special guest with me to help in this, and his name is Yair Davidiy. He's an Orthodox Jew. He lives in Jerusalem, and we are here in Jerusalem doing some programs with him on this subject matter. So in the last few programs, we have been looking at the biblical characteristics of the prophecies that were given to the tribes of Israel. And among those that we looked at is they would possess the gates of their enemies, they'd be located in the isles of the sea, they would be in the north, in the west, they would be in the southlands, which is connected in Isaiah 49:12 with Sinim, or Australia. They would be militarily powerful, economically prosperous. They would be very numerous. They would be associated with kings and monarchies. And so in that regard, we then took a detailed look at Ephraim and Manasseh, the meaning of their names in Hebrew, and then their characteristics. And we saw characteristically Manasseh is associated with the United States. Ephraim is associated with England. We are not saying that everyone who lives in the United States is from the tribe of Manasseh, or everyone that lives in Britain is associated with Ephraim. We're just saying that the United States and Britain characteristically have attributes associated with those countries that can be identified with and associated to the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh. So we are going to continue on in today's program, Yair, looking at the biblical characteristics of the prophecies to the tribes of Israel. And so I'd like to welcome you once again to the program, Yair. And you are the founder of Brit-Am, which is an organization or a ministry that is devoted and dedicated to research and study on the 10 tribes. And because you are Orthodox Jewish, this study is completely from an Orthodox Jewish perspective. You do not believe that Yeshua or Jesus is the Messiah. You do not believe in the New Testament. You're just simply here sharing with our audience regarding what do the Jewish people, what does Judaism, what did the rabbis teach about the 10 tribes. And so you are an expert on this area, so it's a joy to be able to do these interviews from Jerusalem. So once again, welcome to the program. And so how about if we continue in looking at the characteristics. Now these characteristics are not only in the Bible, but you've outlined them in the many books that you've written. And the totality of your research, there's a website, Brit-Am.org, where anyone can go and look up the material that you have provided there on this subject matter. So we're going to begin in today's program and looking at the biblical characteristics of the tribes of Israel as it relates to the prophecies regarding them and their fulfillment. We're going to look at the book of Hosea. Hosea in chapter 7 and verse 8, where it says, Ephraim has mixed himself among the people. Ephraim is a cake not turned. So he mixed or intermingled among the people. So a lot of people who have objections, Yair, to the 10 tribes, they get hung up on the word that is often associated with them and speaking about them. Sometimes people refer to as the lost 10 tribes, and they want to make an argument that the whole teaching of the 10 tribes is baseless because they try to say, well, they're not really lost. Well, of course they're not really lost. what's really meant biblically when we refer to the lost 10 tribes is not that we don't know who they are, not that we don't know where they're at. It's just that they were, as this verse says, they were mixed, or they intermarried among the nations, and they became, from intermarriage, looking like the peoples who they lived with and intermarried with. Is this the Jewish, the rabbinical understanding as well?
Yes, yes.
And how about you comment about the prophecy here about Ephraim, about being mixed or intermingled among the peoples? Why don't you elaborate on this?
So it says that Ephraim will be Ephraim Brit-Am Huyet Bolil, as you translated, as it was translated. Ephraim would, amongst the peoples, will become assimilated, and also says he's given birth to strange children in Hosea. And this was one of the reasons why the rabbi said that for legal purposes, Ephraim until the end times will be considered as non-Jewish. In Yevamot 17, as we have said,
that's in the Talmud. Yevamot 17 is from the Talmud.
Yes.
Continue.
It also says in Isaiah 24, it speaks about those who will return, who were lost in the land of Assyria. Blow a great trumpet for those who were lost in the land of Assyria. In Avdim Be'eretz Ashur, it's a famous song. And this, blow a great trumpet, actually shofar. That's why Jews actually blow shofars more than trumpets, and often in the Bible where it says in Hebrew shofar, it's mistakenly translated as trumpets. It says, blow a great shofar for those who were lost in the land of Assyria. This refers to those who were exiled by the Assyrians to the land of Assyria.
This is, let me quote the verse. It's Isaiah 27 verse 13. It will come to pass in that day that a great trumpet shall be blown, and they shall come which were ready to perish in the land of Assyria. This is the verse you're referring to.
So
continue on.
The expression Paul translated as ready to perish in Hebrew is Avdim, literally those who were lost. So the Bible refers to them as lost. They were lost. Lost in tribes were lost.
Lost in the sense that we don't know who they are or where they went, but lost that they were assimilated and lost their identity of who they were.
Exactly. They lost consciousness of their ancestry, and the peoples around them, and also Judah lost or was were very hazy as to who they were, as to where they went. The legends existed. They themselves retained traditions and customs, and we can trace them through these, but it was nothing was definite. So they were lost, and they still are lost. Most of them, the overwhelming majority of them, don't know who they are, don't want to know who they are. Sometimes are hostile to the idea of being told who their ancestors were, that they do come from Israel. So lost is a fair enough adjective to apply to them. The lost 10 tribes, because there were 10 of them, and they got lost. That's what the Bible says. You don't like it, what can you do?
They got lost or intermingled, and they lost their identity. Once again, it does not mean that they will never know who they are, or we don't know where the places where they went to. But on an individual basis, we can't tell on an individual basis for sure that you are of the 10 tribes of Israel. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. But they will return, and it will be made known unto them on an individual basis who they are, what tribes they belong to. And in the aggregate, as a whole, as large bodies of people, we can say that the lost 10 tribes are definitely amongst them, and are significantly important. The significantly high proportion of certain peoples definitely do descend from Israel. We can say that much.
So in Hosea chapter 7 verse 8 it says Ephraim, it says in the King James, is mixed among the people. So how do we understand the meaning of that verse, mixed among the people?
As we said, they lost identity to themselves. Also they became, they adopted the customs and the practices and even the psychological disposition of the peoples amongst whom they moved, and that's what happened to them.
Okay, so now regarding them and their return, it says in Amos chapter 9 verse 9, "For lo, I will command, and I will sift the house of Israel among all nations like a corn is sifted in the sieve, yet shall not the least grain fall upon the earth. So the God of Israel knows exactly who they are, where they went, who they married, etc. Now we, because we don't have the genealogical records, we don't know on an individual basis exactly who these people are, and for sure that they're descended from the 10 tribes. But the Bible says that God knows who they are, and that's why it's a teaching among the rabbis, and affirm this, that when the Messiah comes, that the Messiah will identify those who are of the tribes of Israel and exactly which tribes they're from. Is that correct?
Yes. The Messiah, or some type of agency that is through the Spirit of the Messiah put into effect by the Messiah, somehow or other this will be done in the Messianic era. God knows everything, so the idea of lost and not lost from Him is not pertinent, does not apply. But also the idea of sifting people and not one grain being lost, we see that in our time. We also have traditions that different people respond to different situations according to some ancestral instinct that drives them. For instance, in the 1700s and 1800s, a good portion of the peoples of Germany, of northern Germany, all over Germany, would pack their bags up and leave Germany. Many of them went to Canada and to North America and to the USA. Sometimes you would get a case where members of one village would all pack up and leave, and members of the neighbouring village would stay where they are, would stay in Germany. And it's not exactly sure as to what was driving them. Economic explanations, social explanations, only partial explanations. Now, only partially give us an answer, because in other words, these people had a certain drive, a spirit, drove them to get out of where they were and to go elsewhere. And we have done studies of the peoples who left, went to the USA, were different from those who stayed behind. In other words, ancestry does do something to people, and even if we're not conscious of doing it for that reason.
Okay, so Hosea 7:8, that Ephraim would be mixed or intermingled among the peoples. Now, in the book of Hosea, it starts out by describing a marriage between Hosea and Gomer, and it mentions children from that marriage, at least 3 that are mentioned in Hosea chapter 1. And one of the children that is mentioned, Hosea chapter 1 verse 4, is Jezreel. It says, "Call his name Jezreel for yet a little while, and I will avenge the blood of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu." So call his name Jezreel. Why was he named Jezreel? What does Jezreel mean? What's this speaking of in a prophetic sense?
So actually this word is a composite word, Jezreel, Israel, similar to the word Israel, but spelled differently. The El portion means God the Almighty, and Yisra can mean sow. To
sow or scatter.
Okay, which God has sown. Again, scattered also can be connote ingather. In other words, the Almighty will ingather that which has been sown outside.
So the meaning of the word is He's got to sow them into the nations, and in an agricultural sense, when you sow a seed, in time you'll reap a harvest. So in speaking about the harvest, in Hosea chapter 1 verse 11, it says, "Then the children of Judah and the children of Israel will be gathered together and appoint themselves one head." Now the gathering together, it says, "For great shall be the day of Jezreel." So there, the reason why it uses the word Jezreel, because the word also has a reference to not only sowing, but also gathering. Is that what you just said in Hebrew?
Yes.
So once again, explain, how does the word Jezreel refer in the Hebrew language to sowing or gathering?
So you have the root. This is a principle of the Hebrew language. That one word can mean both one action or the opposite of the action. For instance, we have the word shorish. The sharesh means root. Sharesh, root. But with a just slightly different intonation, sharesh means to uproot. So we have almost the same word meaning both to root and to uproot. And Yisrael means is actually much more complicated than that. The word Israel is derived from 2 roots. One of them is Zerah, so. Yisrael, Yisod. It is also derived from the Zroya, from the arm. So a person, Yisrael, he sows his seed. In other words, a farmer. In those days, he was also paintings of farmers in the ancient times sowing their seeds, walking along, throwing the seed along, like in a garden, throwing the seeds out. And incidentally, they also, when they throw the seeds out, you use your forearm. This movement, it's also connected. So to gathering in, when it's done by hand, you use your whole arm. So Yisrael means to sow and to gather in.
Okay, so one of the children that's named here is Lo Ami, not my people, because the marriage of Gomer and Hosea was going to represent what was going to happen to the northern kingdom in their sowing, in their intermingling, that in being assimilated in the nations of the world, they would beget strange children, which is a biblical term for non-Israelites. Is that correct?
It could be understood that way, yes.
It could be understood that way. And so, what then historically happened, the word Gomer, Hosea married Gomer, historically, were there peoples that were called or named as being Gomer?
Yes, that is a very important point.
Okay, why don't you explain that to us?
So Gomer, if we look in Genesis 10, the sons of Noah, Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth were the sons of Noah. Noah was after the flood. He was only family remaining on the face of the earth. All present-day humanity had descended from his people. One of the sons of Japheth, the son of Noah, was known as Gomer. Ashkenaz, Riphat, and Togarmah were the three sons of Gomer. And they incidentally gave rise to Turkish and to European peoples, Germanic peoples. And so Gomer was a known entity in the ancient times. Gomer. Gomer is also the name of the woman, of the loose woman who Hosea was commanded to marry in the book of Hosea, yes.
Hosea 1, yes.
And we see from reading these verses, especially throughout the book of Hosea, especially in the first and second chapters, this woman is definitely representing Israel. Israel and her three children represent the lost tribes of Israel. They do not represent Judah, because Judah is explicitly excluded from the equation. Only represent three aspects of the lost tribes of Israel. And so that is all very nice, but so we see that that Gomer can maybe apply to the lost tribes of Israel. We also have a commentary that we just came across recently from one of the major Hasidic rabbis, the Beis Israel, of a rabbi from Gore, who said expressly that Israel...
What's the name of this rabbi?
Rabbi Alta.
Okay.
Alta from one of the leading... The Beis Israel is known as the Beis Israel after his book. He was a recent, like a few decades back, the major rabbi of the Gur Hasidim. He is well known, he is famous. He was there after the Second World War.
These are the Hasidims, or the ultra-Orthodox Jews, is what non-Jews would say.
Yeah, this is one of the major group, or one of the major groups of Hasidim in the world. Tens of thousands of people follow him.
So what did he say about this issue?
He said that Israel, and especially as the people of Israel, especially as connected with Joseph, with the principle of Joseph, and the coming redemption will be known as Gomer. And he said that in Pashat Vayichi, in his commentary to the second last portion, weekly portion on Genesis.
So how is King?
Just to talk about the pertinence of this. We also know that where the lost tribes went to, the Bible tells us that they went to Hala, Habor, and the river Gozan, and the cities of the Medes. And the rabbis in the Talmud and the Midrash.
That's in 2 Kings. Go ahead.
Yeah, in 2 Kings also tell us where they went, what these places were in other terms. One of them is terms Apriki, or the mountains of darkness, Hari Shelik, Slug, and different areas. And they tell us where the lost tribes went to. In the very same areas where the lost tribes went to, they also tell us that the children of Gomer, son of Japheth, also went there. And we find that the Assyrians called the Israelites Gomer or Gomri.
The Syrians who captured the Israelites.
The
Assyrians who captured the Israelites called them.
And took them into exile, called them Gomri or Gomeri.
Okay.
A very similar name, actually, in Assyrian terms, in the linguistic terms, They used the same term for the Israelites as they used for Gomer. As was used for Gomer, for these people who are known as Gomer. And why did they do that? Because you can say it's a coincidence. Because the previous king of Israel, of the northern tribes, is known as Omri. He's the father of Ahab. We all know of Ahab and his wicked wife Jezebel. And they were powerful kings of the north of Israel. And the archaeological inscriptions that we found shows that the Assyrians fought against Ahab and were probably defeated by the coalition that he led. Even though the Bible does not expressly mention it, archaeological evidence does indicate this. So they knew of him, and they were very impressed by him. They referred to the house of Israel as the house of Omri, or just Omri, probably in honor of King Ahab. And they did that right up until the end, long after Omri and Ahab had disappeared and the dynasty had ceased to rule over the northern tribes. They continued to call the house of Israel the northern kingdom of Israel after Omri. They called it Omri, or House of Omri, either one or the other, and they pronounced Omri as Chumri or Gumri, which is actually known pronunciation in Hebrew for the first letter of the word Omri in Hebrew lettering, which is an ayin, which can be pronounced as a k or a g. For instance, now we have the word Gaza, which is Aza in Hebrew. Which is so that's how we have Omri could also be pronounced as Gumri, and it was so pronounced by the Assyrians. And the Assyrians apparently applied this word to the Israelites, and they assumedly may have continued to apply it to them after they had been exiled, because immediately after the Israelites were taken away into exile, we can more or less locate, both according to what the Bible says and what the rabbis say, where these areas were. In these very same areas where the lost tribes were, we find people are suddenly appearing out of nowhere, known as the Cimmerians, which the Assyrians refer to as Gomri or Gomiri. In other words, as Gomer. And we find this, and in Greek writings they're called Cimmerians, so that's where the Cimmerians came from. The Cimmerians, incidentally, according to Greek and Roman records, gave rise or were an important formative factor in Celtic civilization, because they later moved to the west. And they migrated to Western Europe. We can trace out, archaeological evidence proves this. They also gave rise to another group known as the Scythians, and they too are sometimes referred to as Gomeri or Gomiri in Babylonian records. And above the Cimmerians and the Scythians we find evidence, actually proof according to names, customs and various references, and other names which that applied to them. They were definitely Israelites. Or rather, the Israelites were at least somehow or other joined onto them, had become confederated with them.
So the people when the Assyrians took the northern kingdom captivity, they referred to them as Gomer or Gomri, and these people ultimately, historically, are associated with the Cimmerians and the Scythians?
Yes.
That's what you're saying? Okay.
And they moved to Western Europe.
And so, who are the Cimmerians, not the Sumerians, the Cimmerians, and the Scythian peoples? Who are they, and where ultimately did they move to or migrate or live?
So there were peoples who appeared on the fringes of the Assyrian Empire, apparently as colonists that the Assyrians had settled there. We believe them to be, to some degree at least, Israelites of Israelite descent, Israelite tribes, and they, or a portion of them, rebelled against the Assyrians and became into alliance with the Assyrians, and ultimately, for a short period of time, actually a few decades, ruled over the Assyrian Empire, and then were responsible for the destruction of this empire, and were pushed out of the Middle East by the Medes and Babylonians, who replaced them into what is now southern Russia, and from there to the west. They went in stages. They broke up into different groups, but each and every group that we can relate to somehow or other was pushed westward, apart from a small section of them who became the Khazar peoples and ultimately converted to Judaism.
So, when the Assyrians took the northern kingdom captivity, they referred to them as Gomri, which is a name that's associated with King Omri, and linguistically, in their language, is how they referred to it by the name of Gomri rather than Omri, which is associated with Gomer, who is the wife of Hosea and the prophecy that would happen to the northern kingdom, and historically they're associated with the Sumerian people, not Sumerian, Sumerian, and the Scythian peoples. And ultimately, when they were driven out from the land of Assyria, they migrated into parts of southern Russia and then into Western peoples. That's what you just explained, right?
Yes.
And so ultimately what we're covering, and what we have covered on this program, is from the book of Hosea, not only that the northern kingdom would be Jezreel, which is associated with sowed or scattered into the nations, but it's also, in Hebrew, it's a reference to gathering, and the northern kingdom was mixed or intermarried into the nations of the world, and they weren't truly lost. They lost their understanding who they were, but in Amos 9:9 it says that God would know exactly who they are, where they are, and can identify and will identify them in the end of days.